Chapter 18. Santiago. Santiago sat on his bed, feeling as though he was in a daze. He had felt this way ever since Anya revealed the truth to him. He still couldn't believe that she came from a family of assassins, that she herself was going to train to be one. Or maybe she had already completed training and was one? Her skills with the daggers were nothing less than amazing, and he was struggling to wrap his mind around the fact that his childhood friend was capable of wielding such dangerous weapons. And if she was a full-fledged assassin, did that mean she killed people? The thought made him uneasy, and he wasn't quite sure what to think. Finding himself at a crossroads, he did what he always did when he needed advice. He turned to his papa. At the breakfast table, he told him about Anya's revelation. "Is that what she told you?" "I guess that's true, in a sense, supongo." Santiago scrunched his eyebrows, confused at his papa's answer. Was it not as straightforward as Santiago thought? He asked another question. "Anya says she's the family bodyguard, but why," he hesitated, swirling his spoon in the pozole, "would our family need one?" "Well," Ernesto began, setting down his silverware. He knew this question was coming, so he had prepared a somewhat truthful script in his head. "Your abuelo owns a very large weapons factory. In fact, it's the biggest in the city. Because of that, he's classified as an important person here. Important people need bodyguards. It's nothing to worry about," he said reassuringly. Santiago nodded, taking in spoonfuls of the warm pozole. His papa's words made him feel better, but it didn't come anywhere near answering all the questions he had. Why does Anya have to be our bodyguard, though? She's barely older than I am. Well, Ernesto cleared his throat. Anya grew up very differently than you did, Santiago. She did not come from a normal family. As for why she serves as our bodyguard, I think that's a question better directed to your abuelo, or Anya herself. Santiago chewed on his pozole as he pondered his papa's words. His answer seemed fair, and he said between mouthfuls, "I had no idea abuelo was so important." "Your abuelo is an interesting person," Ernesto replied uneasily. Santiago didn't reply to that, and the two of them finished their meal in silence, both lost in their own thoughts. The next day, all of the uneasiness Santiago had felt seemed to vanish, replaced by a newfound excitement. His family actually had a Romanian assassin as a bodyguard, and he had about 1,000,000 follow-up questions. When had Anya started training? Was she skilled with every weapon? Did she know martial arts? Had she ever killed anyone? That question was a little more unnerving than exciting. At first, he tried asking these things to his papa, but he was quickly shut down. "If you want to know more, pregúntale a Anya." Santiago sighed. It wasn't as though he hadn't thought about asking Anya directly, but he hadn't seen her around much lately at La Hacienda. The few times he did, it was always in passing. Either he was heading in, or she was. He supposed she was busy with his abuelo, trying to gather more information on that man, Andres. Santiago shivered at the thought. He hoped he would never have to look at that snake-like face again. Santiago had spent so much of his weekend digesting this new, life-changing information that when Monday arrived, he felt like he was forgetting something very important. He didn't realize what it was until he reached the bottom of the stairs and found a girl leaning against the wall, dressed in his school's uniform. Her silver hair was hidden under a black wig, and her bright green eyes were concealed behind oversized rimmed glasses that were too big for her face. "What are you doing?" Santiago asked, perplexed. She turned to him. "You don't remember? I'm starting school with you today." Santiago's eyes widened as the memory flashed in his mind. Anya's face close to his, her pink lips as she parted, her breath on his skin. "Which is why I will be attending school with you, starting next week." He had completely forgotten about it, and was about to protest when he heard a commanding voice call his name. "Santiago!" Santiago's spine immediately stiffened as he turned to meet the gaze of a tanned man with jet black hair and steel golden brown eyes. Unlike his papa's face, which had a boyish charm, His abuelo's expression was always somber enough to make him feel anxious. Even after the years of living in La Hacienda, things still hadn't changed between them. They maintained a distance from one another. "Sí, abuelo?" Santiago asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm sure you know that Anya will be starting school with you today," he said, arms crossed. Santiago couldn't tell if he was imagining it, but his abuelo sounded tired this morning. "Sí," Santiago nodded. "Anya's name will be Anita Martinez while she attends school with you. She is your cousin on your mother's side. Under no circumstances are you allowed to call her Anya or mention my association nor the company's association with her. Do you understand, Santiago?" Santiago looked into his abuelo's stern eyes and swallowed hard. "Sí, abuelo." "All right, then." His gaze turned to Anya, who was still leaning against the wall. "We try to disguise her as much as possible, but there's only so much you can do," he mumbled as he walked towards her. She unglued herself from the wall and stood straight upon his arrival. Javier placed a hand on his hip and pointed a finger at her. "Acuérdate lo que te dije, eh?" "I'll be fine," she said reassuringly, grabbing his wagging finger and pushing it down. "You worry too much." "And whose fault is that?" Javier crossed his arms. Anya felt a smile trying to creep onto her face as she began to walk away from Javier and toward Santiago. "Shall we go? Don't want to be late, do we?" Yeah, he replied, glancing back at his abuelo uneasily. "Straight to my office when you get back, Anya," Javier called out. "Okay," Anya waved in agreement, but didn't look back. It was the longest car ride to El Instituto St. John Baptiste that Santiago had ever experienced. He tried not to stare at Anya as she looked out the window, but he found himself stealing glances at her regardless. One, because it was weird seeing her in his school uniform, and second, because she looked infuriatingly good in it. Worried that Anya was going to catch him staring back and forth at her, he cleared his throat and started talking. "Is this really necessary?" She glanced at him from the corner of her eye and replied, "Yes." The answer made Santiago impatient. He crossed his arms and pressed. "Is it because of this Andres guy?" "Yes," she said again. "Why would he be going after me? I thought he was you. I thought he was going after you." "That's true." "Then why am I involved at all?" Santiago pressed, hoping it didn't sound like he was whining. But really, he already garnered enough attention as it was. If he showed up with Anya, the attention would increase by tenfold. He was tapping his foot impatiently when she said, "It's because I care about you, Santiago. He's trying to get me through you." Santiago's heart thundered as he simply said, "Oh." The confession took him by surprise. Not because he didn't know it. I mean, he figured as much. They were friends after all. But he had never heard her say the words. The reassurance sent a rush of electricity through his body. Should he say he cared about her too? Would that be too sappy? Maybe this was a chance to steer things in the direction he wanted. Lost in thought, he hadn't noticed how Anya had scooted closer. So close that her bare knee was touching his. "Whoa, what are you doing?" he exclaimed, feeling heat rise to his face as their shoulders brushed. "Turn around for me," she said, her emerald eyes piercing through the lenses of her oversized glasses. Why?" "Just do it," she smiled. He did as he was told, turning away from her. Part of him was glad for it. He was sure his face was bright red now. He felt something fall across his neck, but didn't dare to look down as Anya's cool fingers brushed against his warm skin, sending a shiver down his spine. "Sorry," she said, noticing his slight tremor. "My hands are cold, but I'm done." He hadn't shivered from the cold, but he still replied, "It's okay." Looking down, he saw a golden necklace featuring La Virgen Maria. His eyes widened as he immediately recognized it. "Javier gave this to me when I first came to La Hacienda, but I want you to wear it now," she said. Santiago stared at the necklace hanging from his neck. Anya had worn this every single day since the first time they met. He had asked her about it once, and she had told him it was her greatest treasure. Now, she was giving it to him. The gesture felt so intimate, so sacred, that Santiago couldn't fully understand it, and he instinctively tried to reject it. "Anya, I can't accept this," he said, turning to face her. "Keep it for now," she smiled. "Call it a promise necklace." "What are we promising?" he asked. Her fingers gently brushed against the necklace resting between his collarbones, and he couldn't help but shudder again. "That I will keep you safe, even if it costs me my life," she said, her green eyes locked onto his. "Remember that, every time you look down at it." Santiago swallowed hard. Despite her face being close enough to kiss, he felt ridiculously nervous. He turned away, but not before grabbing her hand in his. "What a promise," he chuckled uneasily. "Well, I don't think it'll come to all that, but I'll keep the necklace for now." Blissfully unaware of the stirrings in Santiago's heart, Anya smiled in relief and intertwined her finger with his. "Thank you," she said, not realizing how much she missed holding hands with him until they were linked together. The next few moments were sweet torture for Santiago. Though their faces were turned away from each other, facing the car windows, their hands were still linked. Her cool hand was intertwined with his warm one, and his heart hammered like a drill inside his chest. It wasn't until his hand began to feel sweaty that he grew self-conscious and pulled away, pretending to adjust his tie. He cleared his throat, hoping that the heat in his face wasn't visible. "How is this going to work?" "Well, we told him I was 16, which I am, give or take a year," Anya began. "And because I am older than you, we won't be in the same classes, but we will have the same lunch period, gym period, and study period. Oh, and I've also joined all the same clubs you're a part of." Santiago tried not to react, but wow, that was a lot of time they would be spending together. Suddenly, he felt a wave of nerves wash over him. "Don't you think that's a little excessive?" he asked indignantly. Anya mused, as if in thought. "Not really. I honestly wish we could spend the whole day together, just like we used to." She flashed him a charming smile. Immediate heat flooded Santiago's cheeks again, leaving him speechless. He wished she wouldn't say things like that while smiling. It made him so uneasy. When they finally pulled up to Instituto, Santiago couldn't wait to get out of the car. He opened the door a moment before it had even come to a complete stop. The cool breeze hit his face, and he silently thanked the universe. It had been too hot in there. He walked quickly, only to notice that Anya was not beside him. He turned around and saw her gazing at the wide green stone arches. Anita?" he asked. Anya looked at him and smiled. "Sorry, just taking it all in. I've never been to school before." "Oh, yeah," Santiago remembered. As far as he knew, Anya had been homeschooled all her life. He had always wondered why, and whenever he asked, she seemed to evade the answer. Now, though, he understood it was all due to her upbringing in a family of assassins. His papa's words echoed in his mind. "Anya grew up very differently than you did, Santiago. She did not come from a normal family." It was then that all the puzzle pieces of Anya seemed to connect in his mind. Her demeanor, her past, her experiences. She had grown up differently, and that shaped who she was today. Memories of their first meeting flashed through his mind, and he recalled the loneliness reflected in her eyes. At that time, they had shared that feeling, but while Santiago moved forward with his life, starting school and making friends, Anya appeared to have stayed behind, carrying a melancholy with her. How long had she been bearing that weight? "My whole family was assassinated." Santiago's heart twisted in pain as he remembered what she had shared with him. The type of loss was something he couldn't imagine. After all, he still had his papa. With a sigh, he set his embarrassment aside, walked toward Anya, and took her hand. "Come on," he mumbled, leading her to the main entrance of the school. A sudden feeling of déjà vu washed over him, and he felt like he was 10 years old again, dragging Anya by the hand all around La Hacienda. Those memories mortified him now. He wished he had acted more maturely. Anya wrapped her fingers again around his hand, feeling grateful that this day had brought them back to how they once were so long ago. "Santiago!" Santiago spotted a thin boy waving frenetically, almost jumping up on his toes. He instinctively let go of Anya's hand, hoping Walter wouldn't notice the redness in his face. "Hey, Walter," he said, but noticed Walter wasn't looking at him, but looking past him. Santiago turned and saw Anya towering over them. She was only a couple of inches taller than Santiago, but that was enough to make her look like a supermodel, while he felt like a gnome. "This is Anita, I mean. She's my cousin, from my mom's side," Santiago stammered, recalling her cover story. Hi, Walter. My name is Anita Martinez, Santiago's cousin. It's so good to meet you. I've heard so much about you. She flashed Walter a dazzling smile and extended her hand for a shake. Walter glanced from her hand to Anya's face, his expression suggesting he had never given anyone a handshake. Santiago felt a wave of annoyance and shoved Anya's extended hand down just as Walter extended his own. Okay, let's get going. We don't want to be late, he said. As he walked, Santiago noticed that Walter was not at his side as usual, but instead was walking beside Anya. So, Walter cleared his throat. Are you going to school here now? Just for a little while, Anya replied, smiling politely. Oh, that's unfortunate, Walter said, his face falling. Santiago felt a surge of irritation. Walter didn't even know Anya. How could he already be disappointed? Well, what classes are you taking? Walter asked. The enthusiasm in Walter's voice as he heard that Anya shared the same lunch and gym periods made Santiago want to bury himself in sand out of embarrassment. Was it really that big of a deal? Relief washed over him when they finally stepped inside the school and Anya stopped in her tracks in the front office. Well, I think this is me. It's my first day, so they told me I have to report to the administration office first. I'll see you both later, okay? Anya smiled, tilting her head to the side. Yeah, Walter replied, a bit too loudly. Bye, Santiago mumbled in annoyance. As soon as she was out of earshot, he felt a body jump on him. Santiago, Walter exclaimed happily. Why didn't you tell me you had such a pretty cousin? How old is she? 16 or something. I can't remember, Santiago grunted. Older girls sure have class, don't they? She's nothing like the girls here at El Instituto. Well, maybe except for Sofia. But even then, Anya's way nicer than Sofia. You're exaggerating, Santiago rolled his eyes. There are plenty of nice girls at our school. Yeah, nice to you. You're a Del Toro. You're literally from one of the top families at the school, Walter said solemnly. Santiago remembered his first meeting with Walter. It was his very first day at school, and his papa had apparently met Walter's dad, Elias, when they were both around Santiago's age, which is how the introductions had been made. Walter seemed like a very shy boy to Santiago. Although Santiago wasn't shy by nature, attending a new school, a private school at that, was enough to rattle his nerves. The two boys exchanged awkward hellos, and Walter offered to show Santiago around the school. He had been attending El Instituto since he was 6 years old. Originally born in the States, his family had moved to Mexico after his mom passed away in a car accident. I'm also here because I lost my mom, Santiago said quietly. She died from cancer. Oh, wow, Walter replied. We're a couple of sad kids, aren't we? Santiago, who had never been referred to as a sad kid before, couldn't help but laugh. Walter looked confused for a moment, but then he joined in the laughter. The echoes of their glee sealed their friendship. Coming back to the present, Santiago told Walter, You know, if someone is ever not nice to you, you can just let me know. Walter grinned. Thanks. And together they walked into their first class of the day.